today, we're diving deep into something affecting so many families, egg allergy in children.
Yeah, it's a really dynamic area, lots of new research, clinical guidance is evolving. It's interesting stuff. Our sources for this deep dive include a big guideline on managing egg allergy, some recent studies on triggers like FPIEs, we'll get into that, and a national survey looking at the impact in the U.S. We're connecting the dots for you.
Okay, so our mission today is to really unpack what we know now about egg allergy. How common is it? What makes it tick? How do families manage it day to day? And how does it even connect with things like vaccinations? Let's get into it. So first off, it might surprise you just how common this is, especially in young kids.
It really is. We're talking nearly 1 in 100 children in the U.S., and the rates are highest in the really little ones.
Oh, under 5.
Exactly. It's actually the second most common food allergy in that age group, right after cow's milk. Over in the UK, the numbers are similar, maybe slightly higher, about 1 in 50 kids.
And it's not always just a mild rash, right?
Yeah.
Reactions can be serious.
They definitely can range. But what's really striking is that some older research pinpointed egg as the most common food causing anaphylaxis in infants showing up in the emergency room with food reactions.
Wow. That's significant.
And there's another layer here. That national survey you mentioned, it found a pretty stark difference based on race.
Oh, what did it show?
Well, it showed egg allergy was actually twice as common among Black children, about 1.6% compared to white children, who were at 0.7%.
Twice as common. That's a disparity we definitely need to understand better.
Absolutely. Something to keep an eye on in research.
Okay, so shifting gears a bit, there's this concept that's really changed the game for managing egg allergy. The baked egg phenomenon. Can you break that down for us?
Yeah, this is super important for families. So get this. Up to maybe 70 or 80% of kids with an egg allergy can actually tolerate egg if it's like really well baked. Think muffins, waffles, that kind of thing.
Even if they react to, say, scrambled eggs or lightly cooked egg.
Exactly. They might react to those forms, but the intense heat of baking seems to change the egg proteins enough that their immune system doesn't react or reacts much less.
So it makes them less allergenic, basically.
For many kids, yes. It's not a universal thing, but for a large percentage.
And this isn't just about letting kids eat cake, right? There's more to it.
Oh, definitely. It's way more than convenience. Some studies suggest that kids who can tolerate baked egg are actually more likely to outgrow their egg allergy completely down the line.
Huh. Interesting. So it might be a sign of a milder allergy overall.
It could be, or perhaps the exposure itself helps. That's part of what allergists consider now. When they talk to families about maybe introducing baked egg, they have a few key reasons.
Like,
well, number one, for over 90% of allergists surveyed, it's about broadening the child's diet. Makes sense, right?
There will be more food options.
Then almost 85% cited improving quality of life. Think birthday parties, school snacks, less stress.
Yeah, that's huge for families.
And that same percentage, nearly 85%, also mentioned the possibility, and I stress possibility, that eating baked egg might help speed up outgrowing the allergy. Plus, over half mention nutritional benefits.
Okay, so the big drivers are diet, quality of life, and maybe helping them get over the allergy faster. That last one, though, does eating baked egg actually make them outgrow it faster? Or does it just identify the kids who are probably going to outgrow it anyway?
That is the million-dollar question. And honestly, the data's a bit mixed. It's inconclusive right now. Some studies hint at a benefit, suggesting it might accelerate things. But then you have other studies, including a pretty solid randomized controlled trial that found kids who ate baked egg regularly didn't outgrow their allergy any faster than similar kids who kept avoiding all egg.
So promising, but not quite proven yet.
Exactly. We need more research there.
So how do allergists even decide if a kid is a candidate to try baked egg? What tests do they use?
It's usually a combination approach. They'll look at blood tests, specifically the IgE level to egg white, that's often called CE, and skin prick tests, SPTs.
Okay, blood tests and skin tests.
Right. Sometimes they'll do component testing too, looking at specific proteins within the egg white. There's one called ovomucoid that's particularly important because it's quite resistant to heat.
So if you react strongly to that specific protein, maybe baked egg isn't going to work.
That's often the thinking, yes. It gives a more detailed picture. But they also look at the whole clinical picture. How severe were past reactions? How long ago was the last one? How old is the child? All that plays a role.
Makes sense. So once they think a child might be a candidate, how do they actually introduce it? Is it done at home, in the clinic?
Mostly the first introduction happens in the clinic. It's called a medically supervised oral food challenge, or OFC.
Okay, so under doctor supervision.
Precisely. The child eats a small measured amount of something with baked egg, like a piece of muffin, and they're watched closely for any reaction. Safety first. However, it is interesting. About a third of allergists said they were more likely to suggest trying baked milk or baked egg at home compared to other food challenges.
Okay, so sometimes home introduction is an option. How does that work? Do parents just give them a muffin?
Well, it's more structured than that usually. Among the allergists who recommend home introduction, about half suggest giving increasing doses over a few hours or maybe a couple of days, working up to a normal portion for the child's age.
Right, like starting small.
Exactly. And then just over a third suggest a slower approach, start with a tiny bit and gradually increase the amount over weeks or even months. This often follows something called an egg ladder.
An egg ladder, like climbing rungs of increasing egg exposure.
Sort of, yeah. You start with the most baked forms, and if that goes well, you slowly try less baked forms over time. It's a gradual reintroduction process.
This all sounds really promising, but challenging a food allergy always has risks, right? Even
It's an absolutely crucial point, yes. While these challenges are generally safe when done correctly under medical guidance, there is always a risk of a reaction, and that includes anaphylaxis.
Even with baked egg?
Even with baked egg, and even in a medically supervised setting, though it's less common than with less cooked forms. We have to be realistic. There have been, unfortunately, very rare but tragic outcomes. For instance, the only known death during an oral food challenge in North America actually happened with baked milk back in 2017. And more recently, there was a death reported from someone eating baked milk at home, apparently as part of a desensitization attempt.
Wow. Okay. That really underscores why you need a doctor involved. You shouldn't just try this stuff on your own.
Absolutely not. Physician guidance is critical. But assuming the challenge is successful and the child tolerates baked egg, what happens then?
Yeah. Do they just eat it freely?
Most allergists, once tolerance is confirmed, recommend eating baked egg fairly regularly, maybe a few times a week. And they usually don't put strict limits on how much is eaten in one go.
Okay, now here's something I find interesting. If a kid passes a baked egg challenge, do they still need to carry an epinephrine auto-injector like an EpiPen?
You know, you'd think maybe not, but the vast majority, over 80% of allergists, still prescribe epinephrine even after a child tolerates baked egg.
Really? Why is that?
It reflects a cautious approach, I think. Tolerating baked egg doesn't automatically mean you tolerate scrambled or raw egg. Accidental exposure to those is still a risk, and they want families prepared for a potentially severe reaction. A small group, maybe 8%, do stop prescribing it, but most play it safe.
Got it. Safety net. Okay, let's broaden the picture. Egg allergy often doesn't travel alone, does it? What other conditions tend to show up alongside it?
That's right. It rarely exists in isolation. Over 60% of kids with egg allergy have other food allergies, too.
Like
milk and peanut are the most common ones you see with egg allergy. And beyond food allergies, conditions like asthma, eczema, atopic dermatitis and allergic rhinitis or hay fever are all more common in kids with egg allergy compared to kids with other food allergies.
So it's part of a bigger allergic picture for many kids.
Often, yes. And there's a specific link. Having egg allergy in infancy seems to predict a higher chance of developing respiratory allergies like asthma or hay fever by the time they're 4 years old.
That's a lot for families to juggle. Now, you mentioned FPIES earlier. Can we dig into that a bit? How is it different and how does egg fit in?
Okay, so FPIES, it stands for Food Protein-Induced Enterocolitis Syndrome. It's important to know this is not the typical IgE-mediated allergy we usually talk about.
So not the immediate hives, swelling, breathing trouble type reaction?
No. FPIS is a delayed reaction, typically involving severe vomiting, diarrhea, lethargy, sometimes dehydration, usually starting a few hours after eating the trigger food. It's non-IgE mediated, meaning the standard allergy tests, skin pricks, and blood IgE tests are often negative.
Okay, delayed severe gut symptoms, and eggs are a trigger.
They're emerging as a significant trigger. Some new research looking ahead to 2025 data from a large registry found egg was the culprit in 19% of pediatric FPIES cases.
Almost 1 in 5. Wow.
Yeah, and the typical age it started was around 8 months old.
Is there any idea why egg FPIES seems to be popping up more?
Well, it's interesting. Researchers noted a significant jump in egg FPIES cases after 2017.
And what happened around 2017?
That's when guidelines started strongly recommending early introduction of common allergens, including egg, to potentially prevent IgE-mediated allergies.
Ah, so could early introduction be somehow linked to this rise in egg FPIES?
It's a hypothesis that needs more study. We don't know for sure, but the timing correlation is definitely suggestive and warrants investigation. It highlights how complex this all is. Trying to prevent one type of reaction might influence another.
Fascinating. Are there other conditions linked to egg protein besides typical allergy and FPIEs?
Yes, eosinophilic esophagitis, or EOE.
Right. EOE. Remind us what that is.
It's a chronic condition where specific white blood cells, eosinophils, build up in the esophagus, causing inflammation, damage, difficulty swallowing, sometimes pain.
An egg is a common trigger for that, too.
Very common. It's implicated in up to 35% of kids and 36% of adults who have EOE. So for people with EOE, egg is often one of the foods they need to strictly avoid as part of their treatment.
Okay, so if a child can't tolerate baked egg, or any egg, and they need to avoid it strictly, what does that look like day to day?
Avoidance is definitely the cornerstone then, and it means being really vigilant. Label reading is key. In places like the EU, egg has to be clearly highlighted on labels, but older products, or ones from outside the EU, might use other terms.
Like albumin?
Exactly, or ovalbumin, lysozyme, words that mean egg protein. Families need to learn those, and cross-contamination is a big risk too.
How so?
Think about shared utensils, cutting boards, bakeries with loose items, buffets. Anywhere unpackaged food is handled. Tiny amounts of egg can cause a reaction in sensitive individuals.
What about breastfeeding moms? If their baby has an egg allergy, does the mom need to cut out eggs?
Generally, no. Most breastfeeding mothers can continue eating eggs without restriction. Reactions to egg protein transferred through breast milk are considered pretty rare.
Okay, that's good news for moms.
It is. However, if the baby has really persistent, severe eczema, or if there's a strong suspicion they are reacting to egg in the mom's diet, then a trial period where the mother avoids egg might be suggested, but always under medical advice.
It sounds incredibly complex, managing all this, especially if there are multiple allergies or other conditions. Where can families get help?
A registered dietitian who specializes in allergies is invaluable. They can help navigate multiple food avoidances, ensure the child's nutrition isn't compromised, and guide families through things like the egg ladder, if that's appropriate.
And studies show dietitians make a difference.
Yes, one study found that without a dietitian involved, the risk of accidental allergic reactions actually doubled. They provide crucial practical support.
And what about the mental health side? All this vigilance must take a toll.
Absolutely. Living with food allergies, the constant fear of a reaction, it can significantly impact quality of life. Anxiety, even depression, can affect both the child and the parents or caregivers. It can be genuinely traumatic.
So psychological support is important too.
Very much so. Therapy, support groups, they can be really effective in helping families cope with the stress and anxiety.
And what about outside the home, like at school or daycare?
Schools and nurseries need clear, robust policies. Staff need training on how to avoid allergens, recognize reactions, and use emergency medication like epinephrine autoinjectors.
So individual care plans are needed.
Definitely. These plans should detail the allergy, the emergency steps, and allow for things like safe, adapted meals. They also need to be careful about activities that might involve raw egg, like some crafts or cooking projects. Communication is key between parents, the school, and the child's doctor. Okay, let's switch gears again. This is an area with a lot of old myths, but thankfully the science now is very clear and, honestly, quite reassuring. Let's talk vaccinations.
Yes, the egg allergy and vaccine question. This causes a lot of anxiety for parents. Let's start with the flu shot.
Right. So most flu vaccines are grown in eggs, and they contain a tiny, tiny amount of egg purine called ovalbumin.
Okay, so there is egg in it.
There is, but it's a minuscule amount. And here's the crucial part. All the major health bodies, the AAAAI, the AAP, the CDC, internationally too, they all agree now. No special precautions are needed when giving the flu vaccine to someone with an egg allergy.
Regardless of how severe their egg allergy is, even anaphylaxis.
Regardless of severity, it's no longer even considered necessary to ask if someone has an egg allergy before giving them any flu vaccine. The risk of reaction is incredibly low, basically negligible for almost everyone.
That is a huge shift from what people might remember. So most kids with egg allergy can just get their flu shot like anyone else.
Exactly, just a routine vaccination. The only tiny exception is for someone who has had such a severe anaphylactic reaction to egg that they needed intensive care. Those individuals should get the vaccine under specialist supervision just to be extra cautious. But that's extremely rare.
Wow. Okay, that's incredibly clear and reassuring for the flu vaccine. What about the MMR vaccine, measles, mumps, rubella?
MMR vaccine. This is another common point of confusion. It's grown in cells from chick embryo, specifically, chick embryo fibroblast cells.
So not actual hen eggs.
Correct. And critically, it does not contain significant amounts of egg protein, not enough to cause an allergic reaction.
So the bottom line for MMR.
All children with egg allergy, no matter how severe, should get their MMR vaccine on schedule in their regular doctor's office with absolutely no extra precautions needed because of the egg allergy. It's safe.
Fantastic. Okay, any other vaccines where egg allergy is a consideration?
Yes, a couple, mainly related to travel or specific exposures. The yellow fever vaccine is grown in hen's eggs and does contain residual egg protein.
So that one is a potential issue.
It is relatively contraindicated, yes. If someone with an egg allergy needs the yellow fever vaccine for travel, they absolutely need to see an allergy specialist well in advance, ideally at least 2 months before their trip.
Why so far in advance?
Because managing it can be complex. It might involve skin testing with the actual vaccine, potentially giving it in 2 smaller doses, or even doing a multi-step desensitization procedure to administer it safely. It requires expert planning.
Got it. Yellow fever needs specialist input. Anything else?
The rabies vaccine. One type, known as the PCEC vaccine, is grown in chick embryo cells and contains traces of egg protein.
So similar contraindication.
It's also relatively contraindicated if someone has a history of anaphylaxis to egg. However, with rabies, the disease is almost invariably fatal. So if someone is exposed to rabies, the urgent need for vaccination generally outweighs the theoretical risk of an allergic reaction to the vaccine.
Risk versus benefit calculation there.
Exactly. And importantly, there's also an alternative rabies vaccine available that's grown in human cells and is completely egg-free. So there are options.
Okay, that clarifies the vaccine picture quite a lot. Flu and MMR are generally fine. Yellow fever and one type of rabies need careful management.
That's the gist of it, yes.
So wrapping things up a bit, where are we headed? What about preventing egg allergy in the first place? And what research is still needed?
Well, on the prevention front, there's been a major U-turn in advice, as we touched on. Current guidance, for instance, in the UK, actually recommends early introduction of well-cooked egg.
Starting when?
Starting around 4 to 6 months of age, especially for infants who already have eczema, as they're at higher risk. The idea is that introducing it early in a cooked form might help the immune system tolerate it, actually reducing the chances of developing an allergy.
That's the opposite of the old advice to delay allergens.
Completely. It's a big shift based on recent landmark studies.
Okay, so early introduction might help prevent it. What are researchers still trying to figure out? Where are the gaps?
Oh, there's still plenty to learn. We need better data on how common egg allergy is in adults, for one thing. And allergies to eggs from buds other than chickens, like quail or duck, not much known there.
Interesting. What else?
There's research looking into whether early life factors, like maybe antibiotic use in the first week of life, could be a risk factor for developing egg allergy later. We also need more precise diagnostic tools, better cutoff levels for those blood tests, ISAPSI and component tests to predict reactions more accurately. And finding reliable markers to predict who will outgrow the allergy versus who will have it persist long term, that would be huge for families.
Being able to predict the future course. Yeah, that would make a difference.
And then there's ongoing work on treatments like oral immunotherapy, or OIT for egg.
Like desensitization, giving tiny amounts of egg to build tolerance.
Exactly. It shows promise, but right now it's generally reserved for specialized centers. It requires a huge commitment from families. There are risks of reactions during treatment, so it's not standard practice everywhere yet. Needs more research to optimize safety and effectiveness. You know, what's really striking when you look at all this is how much the understanding has evolved. We've gone from just avoid all egg, full stop, to a much more nuanced approach.
Yeah, like managing baked egg introduction.
Exactly. That possibility can significantly improve quality of life and maybe even affect the long-term outcome. And just look at the vaccine guidelines, how definitive they've become based on solid evidence. It shows how research really can change practice.
It really does. And this deep dive, I think, highlights how allergy management is becoming so much more personalized, doesn't it? It's not one size fits all anymore. So for you listening, maybe think about this. How does this more nuanced picture, thinking about baked egg tolerance, or these emerging FPIES triggers, how might that change the way you think about introducing foods early on? Or maybe the conversations you have with your doctor about testing or about those vaccine myths. There's always more to unpack, but hopefully this deep dive gave you some solid insights, maybe even a few surprises to think about.